All right, back to this. All right, so welcome to the writing support lesson. This one is going to be on APA 7 parenthetical in-text citations and narrative citations. So the last couple of lessons I did, I worked on APA 7 referencing. So this is kind of a continuation of that. I have links to those lessons. If you were not here for those and you want those, I can always get that to you. So this is just a reminder of what I had done the last couple of times as far as a reference cheat sheet. If you look at the bottom of this slide, the little address to find this particular graphic is apastyle.apa.org. This is a fantastic resource. So maybe while I'm talking, you can go there and you can get this little cheat sheet. I can always put it in the link in the chat later. But this cheat sheet I absolutely love because one, it's color coded and it has these tiny little boxes that tell you exactly what to do in each section of the reference. So this was just kind of a review, real quick review of what I had done the past two lessons. But I want to continue on and now show you how to take that reference and turn it into different types of parenthetical in-text citations or narrative citations. So continuing on. So in that same blog, the apastyle.apa.org, they have an author date citation system, and it looks like this. I'm only picking part of it because most of the time in our doctoral program, we're working with empirical scholarly journal articles. So they will have either one author, two authors, or three or more authors. And if we were to look across in here, so we're going to take this, we're going to look across. It says that if we have one author, if we're doing that parenthetical citation, we just take the author's last name and we put a comma, a space, and the year of publication, and then we close the parentheses. A lot of times what I see when I'm reviewing the work of my learners is they'll put the initials of the author because they saw that in the reference. And when we're doing the parenthetical in-text citations and the narrative citations, there are no author initials at all, just the author's last name, the surname. Now, if we were to do one author in narrative, you'll notice that the parentheses are only around the year. So it would be Luna, and then space, and then the parentheses, the year, and then the closed parentheses. Where this starts to vary is when we have two authors. So let's look across. So this one is Salas and D'Agostino. And if it's parenthetical, we use the little ampersand sign. So that's that little symbol above the 7 on your keyboard. And you'll notice that we still have like that similar spacing. So it's just the author's last name, Salas, a space, the ampersand, a space, the surname of the second author, D'Agostino, a comma, a space, and then we have the year. Now, if you were to write this instead as part of the narrative, let's say you kind of embed this in and you're paraphrasing and you work it into what you're writing, you don't use the ampersand, you spell out the word and. Because in our writing, we wouldn't have the ampersand. We might in our text messages, but not in a scholarly writing. And then you would finish it off with the parentheses and the year of publication. Now, when you have three or more authors, that's when we start using the et al. And the et al is really interesting. This is where we start to see a lot of things being mixed up because we're used to putting a comma after the author's last name. However, in an et al, we don't do that. So we would have the author's last name, Martin, a space, the et, et, space. Then we have the al, al, a period, and a comma. They are right next to each other. And I know, I think it looks weird as well, but this is the correct way to do it as far as an et al. Is concerned. So that comma that we would normally think goes right after the author's last name does not. It goes after the all, and there has to be a little period there. And then, of course, it's followed by the year of publication. Now, if you were to write this in narrative format, there's no comma in here. So it would be Martin et al. With the period, and then there's a space in here, and then we would put it followed by the parentheses with the year of publication. So let's look at what this would look like in real writing. So if we had one author, and I'm just going to take something that I've published, so it would be in the reference, you're going to see the initials. So it'd be McGuire, comma, K period, space, R period, space, and then 2023. So if we wanted to put that as a parenthetical in-text citation, I would just put it at the end. Now this one I've paraphrased. So I'm going to talk a lot about doing paraphrasing and direct quotes. Paraphrasing is what we would want to do the most of in our dissertation writing. We can, on occasion, do a direct quote. A direct quote is when we take something exactly from the article. We've taken 3 or more words and we've extracted it out of the article and we're plopping it into our writing. That's a direct quote, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. The APA handbook says that we should use direct quotes sparingly. So we don't really want to have our dissertation or our essays riddled with direct quotes. Now I know, because I was a high school teacher, this was like the thing we would do, my high schoolers would do, is they'd pick these really long direct quotes and they put them in there because they needed to get word count. But in dissertation writing, we want this to be more paraphrased. So for example, in the sample that you see on the screen, this was paraphrased from the article that I had written, and it just says, micro-teaching can be effective in developing pre-service teachers' content knowledge. And then what you'll notice is there's a space, the parentheses, the author's last name, comma, a space, year of publication, close parentheses. And I want you to notice where the period is. The period is on the outside of those closed parentheses. It's not inside. So the parenthetical in-text citation is the end of the sentence, if you were to put it there. Next would be if I did this in a narrative citation. So it's the exact same thing, paraphrased. But let's say I want to work in the author's last name at maybe the beginning of the sentence. And so we would say McGuire 2023 found that micro-teaching can be effective in developing pre-service teachers' content knowledge. So author's last name, a space, and the only thing that goes in the parentheses would be the year of publication. Now here is a direct quote. So in that article that I wrote, this was a quote that I pulled it straight out of the results section. And what I had written in there, and now I want to write it in my paper, would be the results revealed that the pre-service teachers felt that micro-teaching strengthened their content knowledge. So since I pulled that out, I copied that exactly. That's where you have to put in your quotation marks. So quotation marks around the front part, the last part of the quote, you've got the space, parentheses, author's last name, comma, space, year of publication, comma, space. And because I copied it exactly, I have to tell you what page number I got that on. A lot of times what I see is my learners will write PG for page, they'll write PP for page. However, those are not correct. So in APA 7, we want to have a lowercase p, a period, followed by a space, and then the page number that I pulled that quote from. Close the parentheses, and like the other one, the period goes on the outside. So this is the end of the sentence, so that's where the period goes. Now, if I wanted to do it in narrative format, taking a direct quote, I'm going to work this in. The results of the McGuire 2023 study, quote, revealed that the pre-service teachers felt that micro-teaching strengthened content knowledge. Close the quote. Now you put a space, and you start with your parentheses and you put the lowercase p with a period, a space, and then the page number 160. And then you close the parentheses with a period. All right, I see in the chat, let's see, someone said they're having issues. Okay. I'll get her email in case she can't get back into the lesson. All righty, moving on. So that's with one author. So if we have two authors, this is an article that I wrote with my friend Amy, Dr. Anderson. So she is the first author and I am the second author. And this is the reference. So you'll notice again, we have our initials in the reference. But again, in the parenthetical in-text citation or narrative citations, no initials are needed. So if we were to paraphrase, it would look something like this. And you'll notice that I used the ampersand because it's all contained in the parentheses. If I were to write it in narrative format, paraphrasing, so I've reworked it and written it in my own words, you don't use the ampersand in there because this is part of like the essay. So you have to spell the word and out. Now, if I were to take a direct quote, and again, that means if I take 3 or more words directly out of the article and I want to put them in, to avoid plagiarism, being accused of plagiarism, we have to put quotation marks around it. And this was taken straight out of that article. So this was copied straight out all the way to here. And then you close it with the quotes and you put the space here, parentheses. Now we're back into the parenthetical. So this is where we would use the ampersand. And I just want you to notice that there are spaces between every major thing here. A lot of times I see my students squish everything together. They don't put in the correct spacing. And so it's important to notice and take note of those tiny details because they are important. So we've got the year, the comma, the space. We need a lowercase p with a period, a space, followed by the digit. Is the page number 3. Now, if I wanted to work in the author's names, and this is a lot of times a really great way to write, would be to just say like Anderson and McGuire 2024 explained. So you can see again, using the word spelled out, the word and spelled out. We've got the quotation around the exact quote, closed it, and then the page number at the end. Destiny, I see you've raised your hand. So did you have a question?
I do, ma'am. I've
Yes.
got in my paper I'm working right now, I've got a paraphrase statement that I have actually taken from 2 different articles. With one article had one author and the other article had 2 authors. How do I cite that correctly?
How about at the end, I will entertain that question. I can definitely cover that.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, I got you on that. We'll do it at the end. Good question. All right, let's look at 3 or more authors. We're getting close to wrapping up. So this is an article that I wrote, again, with my friend Amy Anderson, and then also Dr. Chavez, the one that Dr. Marquette said he was meeting with right now. So that's why he had to pop out of our lesson today. Now, in a reference with 3 or more authors, that's an et al. And what ends up happening, and it can be kind of hard because Anderson and Chavez, they don't really get that recognition inside of like the essay because they become the et al. So later on, let's say you are wanting to publish with other researchers, you can kind of alternate who goes first, who the corresponding author is, so that that name gets cited more because the et al, your name doesn't get out there as much. So in a parenthetical in-text citation paraphrased with 3 or more articles, it would look something like this. So I did not copy this straight out of the article. I kind of had to rework some of the wording so that I did not plagiarize. So it says reciprocal mentoring relationships encourage mutual growth. Now, because Anderson and Chavez are the et al., the only name that shows up in here is the first name in the reference. So just as a reminder, you put the author's last name, a space, et, no punctuation, just a space, all, period, followed by a comma. Again, I know that looks weird, but it is correct. The space and the year of publication. Now, if we were to do it in narrative format, I just want to work that into the content that I would be writing in the essay. We would just say McGuire et al. Excuse me. And remember, there's no comma when you do it in the narrative format. It's just followed by the year. And then you just continue with the paraphrased content. But let's say that there was a really great direct quote that you want to use. And again, you're using this sparingly at the doctoral level, but it could say something like this: in, and then the part that I'm taking directly out of the article, put it in quotes so you don't get flagged for plagiarism. In reciprocal mentoring relationships, women spur one another on toward new goals. And then it ends with the quote because that's the end part of what I extracted directly out of the article. And then your parenthetical would look like McGuire et al., period, comma, space 2024, comma, space. Remember, just a lowercase p, a period, space, and then the page number. And if I wanted to do it in narrative format, I could say the results of the McGuire et al. 2024 article revealed that in, and here's my direct quote again. So I opened it with quotes, close it with quotes, and all you need is the page number at the end because you already worked the author and year, kind of you embedded that into your sentence. And remember, your period goes on the outside, so that ends the sentence. So as a reminder, this was the like the little cheat sheet that we found on the apastyle.apa.org blog. And what I would like to do is I had you all pull up an article at the beginning of today's lesson, and I would love it if you would attempt to try your hand at creating a parenthetical in text that's paraphrased, narrative, direct quote with the parenthetical, or a direct quote with the narrative. So depending on what kind of article you pulled up, it will either have one author, two authors, or three or more. What I'd like to do right now is I'm going to stop sharing because I want to give you all those links. So let me, in case you couldn't find it. So let me put that into the chat. So this is the link for the parenthetical versus the narrative. And then I'm also going to go ahead and give you the cheat sheet for the references, because that is a super helpful one as well. So that goes here. So those are there for you. What I'm going to do is I'm also going to stop the recording right now. That way, when I post it later, it's a more short version. That way I can entertain the questions, one-on-one that you all have. And then future learners don't have to listen to, say, 15, 20 minutes of additional questions. They'll just have the lesson. So let me stop the recording. I have to find it.